Give it a swing. Great. Thank you all so much for coming today. It's really exciting to be here with SETI. Thank you so much, Nandini, for inviting me. Thank you all who are on Zoom with us today too. This is the first hybrid Zoom in-person workshop I've done, so this is exciting. So a little bit about me. I am a new media and video artist who has been working in Portland for the last 6 years, and just this last year I moved to Alfred, New York, and I'm currently studying electronic integrated arts. Very exciting stuff, and I'm sure you guys are all interested in that as well since you're here today. When I was in Portland and I'm still currently working on a project called the Mobile Projection Unit. It was originally an idea for us, myself with my collaborator, Fernanda D'Agostino, to create a mobile projection unit, for lack of a better word. But we created it as a way to give access to folks to this technology, which oftentimes can be very cost prohibitive. And through that, we created many public art interventions around Portland and eventually around the Northwest and the West Coast. And so through that, we worked with different media and video artists, filmmakers, students who were interested in creating this type of massive media, and along the way found this software called MadMapper. And we'll get into that in just a bit, but I wanted to just kind of show you all some of the work that Mobile Projection Unit has done, and then other examples of things that are possible with projection mapping. Have any of you done projection mapping before? Very excited. Oh, awesome. Yeah. And I'm curious too, like what you all are interested in learning from this workshop, or kind of what your interests are in video. And why don't you all go around and let me know your names too. You want to start?
Yeah, I'm Solomon, he, him pronouns. I'm the assistant professor of scenic and lighting design here. I have, especially over the pandemic, I got into animation, both stop motion and 2D digital animation, and I did some filmmaking, and I have studied a little bit of projection design for theater, and I'm trying to kind of figure out how to integrate all these things.
Amazing. Cool. Yeah, MadMapper is perfect for that type of work for sure. Awesome.
Hi, I'm Aya, and I actually found out about this workshop through a Slack channel for art design students, and I think I just try my best to dabble in anything, like new software, and
Cool.
if I can get anything out of attending something, I'll try to go.
Awesome. That's rad.
I'm Michelle, and I'm an artist, sculptor, painter, and I don't work with video much. I've done a little bit, but I just want to learn and see what's possible.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm finding that, bridging the sculpture and video collaborations is really fun and really exciting, and it's all about augmenting reality and kind of like bringing new materials to these objects too. That's exciting. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Sean. I professionally have worked in streaming video for like the last 15 years, helping people build streaming services that I'm sure all of you enjoy. And kind of over the pandemic, I followed that obsession into like analog video. So I bought way too many CRTs, a bunch of old analog video mixers, glitchers, those types of things, and I've been experimenting with that. Old projectors,
Yeah.
Very high lumens. And so, interested in all sorts of ways to kind of, I guess, project the digital realm into the analog one. I think the pandemic sort of made me respect and appreciate the analog realm a lot more than the digital one, in certain ways, I guess. Certainly made me think a lot more about the third place that we're all lacking right now, or have been in the past. And I think, video can be a way, and projection mapping can be a way for kind of blending the two, I guess. So.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, CRTs can be very sculptural in that way too, and very tactile. And it's fun. There's many, and we'll touch on this briefly in this workshop, but there's many different workflows to incorporate that type of media into this new media realm as well too.
Cool.
Yeah. Would you like to go?
Yeah, I'm Carl. I'm in the School of Architecture here, and I'm working on a thesis right now, really early on, of like spatialized sound. Trying to do like some sort of multimedia installation for like my final project. Yeah, I think this is really helpful. I've done like a little bit of animation, but yeah, nothing too much.
Cool, amazing. Yeah, yeah. It'll be interesting to get your thoughts on architecture and design with that space too. That's great. Yeah, Annie.
Hi, my name is Annie. I use she, her pronouns. I own and operate a video production company. So I've been a producer for my entire producer director, aspiring independent filmmaker for like most of my career. And I'm really interested in projection mapping, like especially with one, just understanding how I think video storytelling and place-based storytelling is going to be just how we consume a lot of media going forward, and creating pathways either as current video professionals into that, or pathways for like students and people coming into the field, like how do we translate out these video making skills into new technologies such as AR, VR. Projection mapping I've just always thought was cool as shit, like this is really rad. And so I just wanted to understand the producer in me, whenever there's new technologies, like understanding what goes into actually making it so that you understand. It seems so magical. It seems like there's a lot of the software that can do a lot of the heavy lifting, but how do you understand it? Best practices for creating beautiful things.
Totally, totally. Yeah. Thanks so much for being here. It's so good to see you. Yeah. Cool. What's your name?
Hi, my name is Inaya. I am a video editor, video and film editor, and I became interested in light mapping and video mapping really. Some of my friends have been doing it, I've been watching them do it, and it seems like a great way to express a different way of visualizing both animation and archival material. And I have some stuff I wanted to play around with, and so I thought it was a good opportunity for an introduction of how I can experiment with that.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you for being here. You all who are online, Dave, what are you looking forward to?
Hey,
Hi.
can you hear me?
Yeah. How's it going?
Hey, it's Dave. It's your studio mate.
Hi,
Alfred.
Dave. Hi.
Hey,
So glad you're here.
I miss you. Yeah,
I miss
I'm
you
talking
too.
to you through the computer now. I can't wait to learn all this crazy, cool stuff.
Heck yeah. Glad you're here.
Yay.
Whee! Cool. Thank you all for being here. Very exciting. It's really awesome to hear that everyone's coming from such different places with it too. There's a lot that goes into this type of work, projection mapping, outside of just the software. And so like I said, this will be a very basic introduction, but I'll try to cover kind of like the main themes to think about so that you guys can definitely deep dive further in your practice of this as well too. Great. So I just wanted to show you kind of like a few examples of things that the mobile projection unit has done over the past couple of years. You can see it's really has expanded from like large, totally immersive installations right before the pandemic to being entirely outside post, or I guess this was also before pandemic, but you can see it's interesting to kind of like look at the different details of each of these installations and see how the ambient light affects the work, different structures that you can project on, how the light or how the colors interact with the color and texture of the materials that are behind it as well. And then also looking at the interaction by the audience and how they are in relation to the work itself too. As just kind of like a brief side note, I guess, that's always probably one of the most like crucial decision-making steps that you'll do as you're creating these large installations, is just thinking about what is the physical relation to both your projector and your gear and the folks who are interacting with it too, and thinking about their safety and just the feasibility of the project itself. Yeah, and then these are just some examples of things. Some of these are quite simply mapped. You can see these are just like rectangles themselves. But this is also just trying to demonstrate how this can be such a mobile practice too. And this one certainly was probably our most mobile, just on the little back of a bicycle and a battery. And then you can also do many different types of sound installation with these as well. One of you was talking about sound. This was really interesting. We used an FM radio transmitter to transmit the audio from this documentary, which was an interesting, I guess, spatialized sound to help social distance during COVID too. Oh, okay. Okay. And yes, here's just another example of a drive-in using the FM transmitter.
Can I ask, on the FM transmitter, is there like at FCC, like as long as you're below a certain transmission rate, like you can
Yes.
do it without any problem?
Yes, I forget the exact like wattage that it is, but anything, don't quote me on this, maybe. But I'm pretty sure anything below a half a mile radius is within the FCC standards without alerting the FBI that you are pirate radioing. I think the model that I just got it off of like Amazon or eBay or something for maybe like $40, and a lot of like churches use them, especially for like the parking lot sermons that they've been doing. So they're quite common. I think it might be like a half a watt. That sounds
Cool.
right, but yeah, they're fun to find, but just be careful. Yeah, make sure you check out FCC. Yeah, so then, so we had, Mobile Projection Unit had been doing a lot of outdoor, more guerrilla type of installations and screenings with different cohort members that we had put together to provide gear. But as we were growing throughout the pandemic, we started getting some more commissions from different institutions who were looking for more safe, socially distant opportunities for people to still experience art. So here was one from the virtual VR expanded show in 2020 at the Northwest Film Center. And here you can kind of start to see some more of like these shapes taking form, where we're specifically mapping like the columns and the archways and doing some background work too. Yeah, and then we did a series at the Portland Art Museum over the summer last year, where we had 4 different iterations of collaborations working with different regional and West Coast artists. This was a show that we had collaborated with Keon Gaskin, who is a Portland-based performance artist, and also worked with Pamela Z, who we streamed in from San Francisco. And these were really fun projects, because I think maybe you were talking about doing more like theater collaborations too. So we used a variety of softwares to create these performances. We used Isadora, which is an object-based coding software, where we were able to do a lot of live mixing, and then we're able to patch those through to MadMapper, where we could basically use it as like a storytelling like timeline, where we could use that live generated content and really schedule it exactly where and when we wanted it to show up to on the buildings. And these were quite extensive projects. I believe we had 4 projectors covering the span of the courtyard. And I'm sure many of you may have been there before, where it's like in between the 2 buildings of the Portland Art Museum. And then we had like a little makeshift studio inside this little corridor right here too. So there's a lot of cords, which we'll see today too. There's a lot of cord management to think about. Sometimes when you're on the ground, it's a little bit hard to manage, but something to think about too. Yeah, and then these were just some other locations. This was when I was out in Spokane, Washington, with a residency called Laboratory, which many of you should look into. They do new media and video residencies, and they're really great, very supportive. And this was probably one of the only projects that they had last year, in that it was able to be outside or presented outside. So again, here's just like some examples of different textures and different spaces that you could projection map on, just to kind of start getting your mind thinking about different spaces rather than just blank walls. So these were both these kind of like giant rocks that were in the river in Spokane. And here's kind of like my my outdoor river rig with my my giant laptop and a projector. But that's a lot of the fun of it too. Again, like speaking to the relation of the gear to the object that you're mapping itself. Like a lot of these were just kind of tests and just kind of seeing what the material and the light and how they would combine. But you know, if this was a more elaborate installation, like what's a better situation for mounting this for maybe a more permanent event too. Yeah, and then here's just some more examples of different tests. So this was a bridge, and this was a giant water power building on the river. And again, yeah, just looking at, you know, like looking at the scene itself, like thinking about what an ideal situation is, which is complete darkness, which is very hard to find in the open. Probably one of my most successful outdoor projection experiences was at Caldera in Eastern Oregon. There's absolutely no light pollution there. It's really fun. And so that was probably one of the first times I was able to project on trees, just because it was really able to capture so much light from the projector itself. But, you know, you can still see, and depending on the luminosity of the projectors too, that's also a very big factor. The bigger the lumens, the better the image, plus a lot of other factors. But generally, you can say the more lumens that you have on your projector, the easier you will be able to see an image on an architecture. Typically, the luminosity of the projectors that I work with are around 7,000. And that is generally within the range of like consumer grade projectors that are still somewhat affordable. But you'll see much higher lumens, such as, you know, 10, 20, 30,000 that much larger production companies will work with. But then with those, the price starts going up quite significantly. All right. Yes, here's another example from Spokane during laboratory residency. This is just kind of a cell phone shot, but you can see that in here, this is where we're starting to get into mapping some letters specifically, and different patterns. And I'll talk more about that in detail, about how you can do much more complicated mapping when you are away from the site too. Again, here's just an example. This was on a fireplace. This was at Caldera. And again, another shot at the Burnside Bridge. Cool. So that's some of the work that mobile projection has done. And then I just wanted to show you a couple different links of other folks who I am inspired by and who do very interesting work with projection mapping. Here's a link from Tony Osler, who does really amazing sculptural work with projection mapping. So you can see he will fabricate these like specific objects and then create video works to fit them precisely throughout this installation too. Which is another big factor that we'll talk about in this class is like a lot of times as filmmakers, as video makers, we'll work in the 16:9 format, the rectangular format. And that can work in many different instances. And sometimes that's the format that you want to work in. But when you're thinking about projection mapping, you want to always start with the location first. You want to think about what you're mapping on, what's the shape of it, what's the ratio, dimensions of it, what's the actual sizing of it. That'll help for you to determine, you know, the shape, the ratio, the resolution, all these things that will make it more impactful. Because as you'll see when we get into MadMapper itself, some of the images can be quite cropped if you're still only using the 16:9 formatting. Not to say there's anything wrong with that, but just to think, again, thinking about where you want to end up, like maybe one of these crazy shapes. Yeah, how you want to do that. These are really fun. I like these eyeballs a lot too.
What are the objects made of?
I'm not sure. It looks like some type of plywood, maybe? Yeah. I would say that's a great material, but wood is really expensive now, so maybe suggest something else. These are kind of fun. A lot of his earlier work was with these kind of like doll heads that he would project these faces onto. Really freaky, really fun stuff. That one's spooky. There was something in here that made me think of something else. Oh, so 3D objects too. That's something to consider, especially if you're doing like more elaborate projection mapping. Today we'll basically be going over 2D, mapping 2D spaces. But there is so much possibility of things that you can do in MadMapper where you could do a 3D scan of an object and then actually place that scan within MadMapper, that you can code it to where it looks like it's manipulating and stretching the material around this 3D object that you can then set up and project in real life too. That's the advanced workshop. Yeah, and then let's see, what else we got? Craig Winslow, I don't know if any of y'all know him. He is from Portland and does really amazing projection mapping work. I just wanted to show you his website briefly. This is in Las Vegas. He did this piece where he worked with the Neon Light Museum to kind of like reinvigorate all of these neon light signs. All of this light that you see right now is projection mapping. None of it is neon light, yeah. So I find that very striking. And I think you can kind of see like in the middle of the installation, there's these like towers that house all the projectors. Let's see if it flashes back to there again.
So I guess the lights weren't functional anymore and then he kind of like made them functional again in a different way?
Totally, yeah. So instead of the light coming from the bulbs, it's being projected on them. Yeah. So this is an example too of something that's outdoor that is a permanent installation too. And just, oh yeah, you can see these towers are definitely where the projector lights are coming from. So that's really fun. BJ Suavecillo. These are really fun. This is also just another example of a more mobile projection type of project. And thinking about how mapping can be used with different types of content that can work across many different forms and materials. I don't know if this has sound. There we go. Cool. So they're using some other kind of software too, but we don't have time for that. We're gonna move on. But I think something that was interesting about that content was a lot of the animations had black backgrounds, which is something that is important to talk about too. The absence of light looks like there's nothing there. And so a lot of times that's a fun magic trick you can use in projection mapping, that even if you do have a 16:9 format video, it can still appear to look like it's just kind of free floating characters in a space too. Yeah. And then these are some more political uses of projection mapping too. I'm sure many of you have seen this imagery from the summer of 2020. This is probably one of the most unique and brilliant pieces that I saw. Hi there, welcome. And so this is a lot more aligned with protest and using more graphics rather than video itself too. And then what is this? Oh, okay. And then this last piece is just like super spectacular. Like, I think this is maybe credited as like one of like the biggest light projections in the world or like something like that. It's in Chicago. And I think it is something like maybe 14 projectors. Anyways, I'll just let you see. Oh yeah.
The art on the mark is taking something that's been a blight and make it very bright and we shine not just in our city, but shine throughout the world. And we're about to experience the largest art light show in the world.
Pretty cool. I like that kind of stuff. It's just really amazing to me to see like that large of a scale of production. And so, you know, I'm not sure exactly if they're using MadMapper, but you could definitely use the software to do that. But it's also a lot of blending the multiple projectors together and those kinds of considerations as well too. And then I also just wanted to let you know that you can, I don't know why I can't click on this right now. There are so many tutorials of MadMapper on YouTube. If you just type in MadMapper into YouTube, MadMapper company itself puts out like tons and tons of tutorials, and they also do like master classes, and like every time there's a new upgrade to the software, they'll do like a whole run through of like all the new things that are coming out. And they've been doing a really good job of updating tutorials with things outside of video work too. So there's also GMX lights. There's so much that you can do with MadMapper that, you know, it's like I haven't even gotten there because I primarily work in video. But just to let you know, once we finish this workshop, there's so many more tools and experience that can help you out online too. And that's primarily how I learned MadMapper, was through those tutorials. So it's very simple. They're really good at explaining things, and I just cannot recommend it enough. It's really great. Yeah, and then I think maybe before we jump into the software, just kind of, again, talking about the different things to think about when you are projection mapping. Probably like, there's like 3 big things, right, that we briefly covered earlier. One is the video content that you're using, and all of those things that you're considering are within the content are very important. You want to think about, okay, so if we're thinking of a space outside that has low predictability of light control, you want to think about how you can create the content that can fit those spaces best. And I've found that a lot of times the best way to create content for that is to create very high contrast works. And it'll look very different, and we'll see this as we're working through this too. It'll look very different from your screen than it does on the projector and the wall that you're projecting it onto. And that's for many different reasons. Again, it has to do with the luminosity of the projectors, the resolution. It also has to do with the color of the walls, the material of the walls, and again, the ambient lighting that's coming in and ruining all of your hard work. There's a lot of hacks that you can do outdoors. Sometimes you can work with building owners to turn off their lights. Sometimes it can be an easy ask like that. A lot of times I've worked with different city lights that the Parks Bureau is not super excited about turning them off, and you can use different materials to cover them temporarily. Yep, and then you can also do some fun hacks. These are kind of interesting online, where you can basically trick a street lamp into thinking that the sun is still on by like putting your flashlight on like a sensor, and they'll turn off that way. And other ways, yeah. And then, I mean, sometimes it's just unavoidable. Sometimes there's just too much lighting in an area, so sometimes that can just totally cut off the ability to even using that space at all. What else? Yeah, so materiality. So we're looking at the buildings. I would say probably the easiest color of a building to project on is white, or even like a light gray. Sometimes gray can actually be better because it's like adding a little bit more pigment and driving that contrast of the work that you created. Darker colors, brick, can be quite difficult to project on, just because it will again, deplete the contrast ratio of the work that you have created. Windows can be very tricky to project on. They just let the light straight through. But if you put some kind of like vinyl or film up, a lot of times they work great as either rear projection or capturing the light. And those can be quite interesting too, because it'll look like the projection is kind of just like stuck in the air, and that's really fun too. Other things. Yes, so again, like just good practice for projection mapping, especially if you're doing more like guerrilla projection, is just to be really aware of your surroundings. There has not been a lot that has landed on typically like any legal status of light pollution on buildings, but there still is a possibility of trespassing physically. So if that's something that you're doing on your own as an artist or as an activist, I would suggest just like being really aware of your surroundings, and that's why I like to always promote mobility in case you need to scoot away quickly. Not that I've had too many of those experiences, but just something to consider. But oftentimes when you collaborate and have a physical space that you're working with, they can help you take care of a lot of those things too. And then you can spread out and not have to worry about, gear safety and all that too. And then again, power, electricity. That's like a huge consideration in this work too. In my work, I use generators, gas generators. I find that they have been the most reliable in being able to power the high wattage of the gear that I use consistently for many hours. I don't like the smell and I don't like the sound, but it's the only thing that I've been able to trust with it. But I have seen some different aspects or different groups use batteries, but oftentimes they might not be the amount of wattage that you need, or sometimes you need specific types of inverters for projectors too. They can be very temperamental. If they turn on at all, sometimes they don't like to stay on, and then a bulb can pop and then you're out $300. So just be really careful with those kinds of considerations. And what else? But yeah, the best is hardline electricity. If you can pull from an outlet from an outdoor building, or again, if you know the people whose space that you're working in, maybe you can pull one from inside. But your best friend are like 50 to 100 foot extension cords. Super great to have on you all the time. Yeah.
Just make sure they're high AWG, you have a high wattage projector.
Totally, yeah. Yes, you don't want to do that. Yeah, get those thick cords. That's what you need. Great. So do you guys have any questions initially before we jump into the software?
Very abstract question.
Yeah.
So I think this course tonight is going to be a lot about like the how, but I'm just curious from your journey, why, or what do you hope to say with the pieces that you make? Obviously we saw a lot of different ones. They range from just cool stuff on cool objects to, political statements. I'm curious from your perspective, like why you've chosen this as part of the medium and what you hope to tell people through it. Totally, yeah. Why have I chosen projection mapping as a part of my practice? Just repeating it for the live stream too. Yeah, I mean that could be a whole artist talk in itself. But I would say that a lot of my work is anti-institutional. And opening up spaces and creating spaces for folks who might not normally have access to gallery spaces or museums, and being able to share that type of work with different audiences too. A lot of like what I'm saying in terms of being aware of your surroundings and being able to move quickly is about like asserting your space, yourself
and your story in public too, and wanting to be able to share that ethos with other folks as well. I would say too that I've worked in media for a long time, and one of the most magical and fascinating parts about it is that the bigger it gets, the more interesting it becomes, in my opinion. Because part of my practice involves a lot of social events. I would say that I'm half video art and half social practice, and so I like to be able to bring people together. And it's hard to do that when you just, not when you just, but it's harder to do that when you post a video, say on YouTube, rather than being like, meet me on the corner of Morrison and 10th and we'll have it 3 stories high. There's many more people that can be accommodated into that space. And then again, I really like the materiality of combining video with architecture. I think that there's something really beautiful in how it can transform a space through this type of sculptural elements, and augmenting reality through storytelling. And specifically, my work, excuse me, conceptually deals a lot with mythology and site specificity in creating new mythologies in a space too. So I think those all kind of come together and help look at space and transforming that space and having other people within that space too. That was a lot. Is that helpful?
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate you answering the question.
Yeah.
I know it's very attractive.
Yeah, totally. But it's really fun too. I mean, I work with CRTs a lot too, and the reason I do that is because they're sculptural objects to me. And so I feel like doing projection mapping was just kind of like the next step in video as sculpture too. So, or a side step to that as well. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Another projecting onto anything in the circuit, is there like a, would you say personally, a huge learning curve between using video media versus just images?
I don't think so. I mean, something that I've noticed is that, so the question was looking at differences between video and still images for projection mapping and kind of the learning curve between those two. I think the first thing that kind of is striking to me is that documentation with still images for projection mapping is a lot better than working with video, just because it's a lot clearer and crisper. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's just kind of whatever the final outcome that you want it to look like. And if you work more with stills, then you can certainly use stills in projection mapping. And if you work in video, just as easy to do that. I think maybe, yeah, the pre-workflow is like, would you be working with, Photoshop or Premiere? And then like, I think those are probably the only really big considerations to make, but as we get into MadMapper, I'll show you all the different ways that you can import content and then use those as different kind of like surfaces. And they work in exactly the same way too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I think it's a more technical question, but I imagine there's some type of expertise or strategy behind photographing projected work. Do you have experience with that?
So the question was about photographing projected work. I don't have personal lot of experience. I typically do a lot of my own documentation with a cell phone, which I would not recommend doing. Even, I don't know, I have like the iPhone 11 or something, and it's great, but it's not anywhere near, if you had like a DSLR or something. The photographers that I hire for events will typically have lenses and cameras that are really good light ratio, I guess. Yeah. Because it's like you're in a dark space, but you're trying to photograph light, right? So I can find out more information about that for you. But yeah, my biggest tip is use something better than an iPhone.
Yeah.
And it's really, if you're taking a still image, it's best to kind of pause the imagery in the projection that you're doing, because you'll have a more likely a chance of getting like a clean image when you're documenting it too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyone else right now? Uh-huh.
This follows up the last one. Do you have like experience also projecting like with a tracking object, like say somebody who's walking, and like coordinated a syncing?
Right, yeah. So thinking about projecting on moving objects, I have not successfully done that. I know it is possible. It takes a lot of coding skill. There are different softwares that I've seen people do similar things like that. I would say Touch Designer is probably a good bet of trying that kind of thing. Isadora is on its way. Dave, do you know any other softwares that might work in that capacity of like tracking on objects that are moving?
No, my thought is along the lines of Touch Designer, because you could do the motion tracking and integrate that. But this is an interesting thing to keep thinking about. Maybe we can find some stuff to put in the Discord about this.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and so I'm sure there are definitely links online that we could find of people doing that. I have seen it actually I just saw one today that was of a woman who was getting like her face projected in different makeup, and she just had like a really simple movement of just like tracking her face up and down, and then it was like a AR filter but in real life. But it would require using like what are those things called? The Xbox.
Yeah, that's why I think, that's why the Touch Designer might be the way to go, because you can get the use connects pretty cheap now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then in Touch Designer, there's a module that connects directly to the Connect, so it makes it easy to just experiment in that space.
You got to connect to the Connect for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it is possible. Still working on it, but yeah. If you figure it out, let me know. I'd love to see, because it's really cool. It'd be really, really fascinating to see that with, yeah, like a band or, theatrical performance or something like that too. Yeah. Other questions right now?
Maybe one other quick one.
Yeah.
You mentioned a bunch of individual artists. What about communities like SETI, or in New York there's Space with Andre J.
Yeah.
Following.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other communities like those that you're maybe not a part of but follow or are a part of?
Yeah, sure. And Dave, you probably, or anyone online too, maybe you have some suggestions of that, or anyone in this room too. The question was, what are other video organizations that support this type of work similar to SETI? I would say, yeah, Phase Space is great. They're awesome. Paloma graduated from Alfred too a couple years ago. Experimental Television Center is a good one. Signal Culture, great residency, huge hub for experimental video makers. Coaxial in LA is amazing. They are probably one of the biggest on the West Coast. Oh God, Chicago, I know has like a really good group of folks. I can't think of Sky's group. Dave, sorry, I keep calling on you. do you know of other organizations that would be supportive of that too?
Oh boy, I'm just always blown away by the stuff I see the Winter Light Festival doing there in Portland. I think that's probably a really good one.
Absolutely. Totally.
Scanline's The forum recently opened a couple of years ago. That's a good one for kind of analog video, glitch art stuff.
Absolutely,
I
yeah.
think it's scanlines.xyz.
Yes, yeah. And I would say that a lot of the ways that I learn about different things, I was talking about like the inverters for batteries for plugging in your projector. Like Facebook groups are probably one of like the best resources for this type of work too. You could just type in like projection mapping into Facebook and just add every group. And a lot of times people post different projects that they're working on or different opportunities, but a lot of times there's just threads of folks who are trying to troubleshoot things. And so I actually asked out a couple forums like before I invested in this computer, like what's the best computer for projection mapping in this very specific outdoor setting, or like, again, like what's a good inverter for battery powered equipment. And I would say that there's, and I'm sure many people have experienced this too, that many of my future collaborators or, video freak friends are online, and many of whom I haven't met in person. So I would say that, yeah, get on Instagram, get on Facebook. I'm sure they're on TikTok now too. They're out there, and they're great, great resources for that type of work.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Is everyone feeling good? Cool. We will jump to MadMapper. Great. So does everyone have a laptop here? Do you need one? You got one? Cool. Do you all have, do you need one? You got one, okay. And for those of you online too, if you have not already downloaded the free version of MadMapper, now is a good time to do that. I believe it's just like madmapper.com. Let me see. MadMapper.
I'm going to interrupt for just a second. We have, on the ones we have here, we have the free versions. We will have licenses soon. We're just like in the process of getting approval. And you mentioned Touch Designer. We have a couple of Touch Designer licenses installed that are like the regular license, and we have some free licenses as well. And if people want to play with this tutorial, we can like get a couple of those. But and yeah, Dave maybe mentioned the Discord. I'm just going to alert back here, but join the Discord if you haven't, so we can continue the conversation and like come up with things in there.
Which channel are you in?
What?
I said, which channel are you in?
Oh, I haven't gone out there. I'm not trying to manage like a Zoom, a live stream, and that.
I think there's a workshop.
Yeah, so we'll start typing the workshops channel after when Sarah starts doing this.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was kind of a
Perfect, thank you.
Great. Yeah, so you can download the demo version here. You can pretty much do everything except there's a watermark. But for our purposes today, if you don't have it already, you can download this demo version. Easy peasy. Yeah, just wait a few minutes, make sure everyone's got that going on.
while you're looking for that. For those of you who came, I mentioned this at the beginning. We do every 2 years do a hackathon and show to the Winter Light Festival, so we've been part of the festival. So we'll be doing one on the weekend of 21st through 23rd. So if you want to come in, and join, I'll send everybody a link and start doing either work on your own thing or other things. But that was partly why we wanted to have this workshop so quickly, because it's such a perfect thing, and our show will be on February 5th. And we're going to be taking over sort of this whole building for both the hackathon and for this work.
Yes, hackathon happening. This is the microphone. Hackathon happening, and Portland Warner Lights Festival happening soon. Stay tuned via Discord. Very cool. Okay, does everyone have it downloaded? Yeah, great. Okay, cool. Very cool. Okay, so this is what MadMapper looks like. It's very cool. I really like to use a mouse when I use MadMapper, just because we'll get into more masking, creating masks, and it is very helpful in getting a lot of precision. Although it's very possible to use a trackpad.
Does anyone have a USB adapter? I'll try to the Mac.
USB. Great, so this is what MadMapper looks like when you open it up. Pretty blank. I'll kind of just do like a brief run through of what some of these things are that are working in relation to what we will be using. This is a 2-screen panel. This is kind of the main workspace that you're working in. On the left, this checker box that we see right now is our input, and on the left, or excuse me, on the right is our output. So we'll see, maybe I'll just add an object really quickly, and I will make it something other than that. Okay, so as you can see, this box that I'm moving around on the left right now is basically the confines of our input. So I can make it much smaller, and it's kind of cropping the content that we have, or I can make it much larger, and then it's kind of like filling the space in the output that we're using too. And you can move it around each corner. You can select each side, I think, backwards on a, there we go, on PC. It's hard switching back and forth all the time. And then here on the output, you'll see that right now it is the same aspect ratio as our input, but you can change it to become any aspect ratio you want, really. You can do that by stretching it, or I think you can also do it here. Oh, this is changing the input. But right here you can see the resolution. I just changed it manually to 1920 by 1080, and then I can still use these little dots to change the aspect ratio. So when we're looking at this output, this rectangle here, this is basically what the projector is outputting. This whole like kind of lighter gray rectangle is what would be casting a light out of it. And this weird little checker box that we have here is basically a piece of video that we could move in real time with my mouse. And we'll be hooking up the projectors in just a bit too, so you can see how using the software interacts with the actual projection itself. But I just wanted to kind of like do a hard focus on what the software itself is looking like first. But anyways, I think this is probably one of the things that just like really blew my mind when I first started working with the software, is how easy it is to manipulate the materiality of it. You know, if some of you work in Premiere or Final Cut, it's a lot harder just to do all this kind of like wacky stuff. Sorry, I keep moving that around. Yeah, so those are your two basic workspaces that you have, your input and your output. I'm just going to make it so it's fitting the whole output right now. And what I created to make that over here is in this first column. You'll see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. This first one, these are our quads. And they come in a variety of shapes that you can work with. And then they're all listed here. So if I make another one, now I have quad 2. And you can see quad 2 is selected. So this is the input of quad 2. Making it a little bit smaller. And then now I'm moving quad 2 around. And now I'm moving quad 1 around. You can also use different shapes of quads, so you can use a triangle. These are kind of like pre-built, custom for you. If you're using a triangular space, you can very easily spin them around, move them into a corner, make them bigger. It's too big. Do some fun designs with them. Something that I started doing when I first used MadMapper was I was kind of hacking it for more artistic reasons and using it as a collage tool. So without even using like architecture, just creating these different shapes and just being able to move them around really easily. Again, it's a lot harder to do that in Premiere, but it's really fun to just wag them around. We also have circles. These are really fun. Oh, and so you'll see as I'm creating them, again, they're all showing up over here on this left side. You can lock them into place. So now trying to move the circle will not let me because it's locked. I can deselect it and it disappears. Back and forth. You can do that with multiple things. And then this also is tracking the layering. So right now the circle is on top, but I can bring it to the bottom, and now it's behind all of the other materials. So those are really fun. So, you know, as we're looking at mapping these different workshop spaces, these different shaped quads are really helpful for really quick content creations. But what we will get into just a little bit later, once I go through some of the more basic things, is down here is our warping, or excuse me, our mask creating. And then this is where it gets really fun, and we'll look at how you do very specific projection mapping, like what we're here to do. But sticking with the basics for now. So we have these different shapes. Here's our input, here's our output. We can go over and look at, let's just get rid of some of these for simplicity's sake. So we have our quad number 1 hanging out over here. There's a lot of different things just in the input section of it that you can mess with your content. So So right on the right side, these are all things that MadMapper has provided as materials for you already. Right now we're using this generator called the test card. That's why it's this black and white checker. But if you go over here on the left, right under the quad generator, we'll call it, you can see there's some simple things that you can change your output with. So right now I'm just doing opacity. So you can go to 0, 100%, anywhere in between. This is really great if you are, well, for a variety of reasons, but I would say that I like to use opacity because it's fun to do layering in MadMapper. So if you have multiple things that you're mixing over, you can use different opacities to create more dynamic images. Again, with like blend mode, maybe I'll add another quad just so we can see something else. I'll put this kind of funky mad noise is what it's called. So you can see the opacity changing and these things. And then these are the different ways that you can mix the materials on top of it too, like some of them. So you can see with the add, that'll change the opacity. Over is strictly over. And again, these will all change with the different content and materials that you're using and how they interact with each other. But you can kind of see that they're doing different fun things with each different mix of it. We'll stick with over for now. That's the default. And then just going back to our first quad here. So you can change the color of different things over here on the left. Pretty fun, different ways of doing that. There's different FX depending on what you want to do. So actually you could do live chroma key inside of MadMapper, which is really fun. It's all about your workflow. Like if you are typically, doing most of your work in Premiere and have pre-recorded content, maybe these aren't even things that you need to worry about. But say you're working in Touch Designer or you have chroma green content that you're using, it's a really nice option that you can do more of this kind of like mixing and editing within MadMapper as well. Yeah, but there's lots of different things. So yeah, I mean, we're just going crazy over here. So then these are fun too. You can flip things really easily. And again, we'll get into masking in just a bit. But then again, if we look over here, these are other ways that we can work with the different generators and change them too. So like we saw earlier, we can change the resolution. This specifically, again, we're working with this test card of the generator. We can come down here and add the count and go all the way up to 32. I'm sure you could hack this too and do, let's say, 100. Nope, it doesn't like that. I guess the highest is 32. And again, you can change the colors, do whatever kind of things you want. But essentially showing you this because any of these generators and materials that are provided by MadMapper are all hackable. And it's really fun because you can create some really interesting generative materials, just using the things that they have provided already. And especially if you did bring video content today, or if you didn't, it's fun to kind of mix both of these design elements and create really beautiful installations. So let's see, maybe we'll look at this one too. So this is our quad 2. We currently have this mad noise in here. If we restart it, looks like you can kind of refresh it to start at the beginning of its generation. There's all sorts of types that it has, like this whirly, which is really fun. There's flow. I mean, these are all very different, right, in just a few clicks of things. Wow, that's fun. And then we can change the speed. You can go super crazy, slow it down, maybe make it look a little bit more like a river, like smoky liquid light or something. And then let's see what this strobe does. Just kind of makes it stuttering. What's really fun about all of these parameters too is that you're able to connect them to MIDI controllers. So if that's something that you all work with, live performative aspects, you could hook up a MIDI, which is, I recommend if that's something that you're interested in doing and doing more live performative type of work, especially in like theatrical productions or live musical events. Hooking up a MIDI controller can help you navigate all these different functions very quickly. And I think that that's located just over here in Edit. And all you would do is click on Edit MIDI Controls. And with your MIDI controller, I'm pretty sure you can just click on whatever you want to do. Say it's like the speed, strobe, the type, whatever. And then just use your MIDI controller and assign that to a specific button or knob. And then easy peasy, you're going to town.
If you want them to play with later when you're doing hands-on things, there's a couple in the cupboard there.
Great, yeah. SETI has a few MIDI controllers to do that.
And test it and show people if you want later.
Absolutely, cool. And it looks like there's also the possibility of doing that with keyboard controls too. So again, if you're at home doing this and you don't have a MIDI controller, you can do the same thing where you are assigning these different parameters to keys just on your keyboard too. But yeah, again, that's more advanced, thinking about performance in MadMapper, but just kind of showing you what the possibilities are with this type of software. Again, so we started with this mad noise and are already making it pretty crazy. There's other things. Again, in each like different generator, there's these different controls that you can have. So, this would be fun if you're performing, maybe having it going back and forth to the beat, or going up and down. Go big, go small. Anamorphize it. That's fun. And that's cool too. I got this over here too. I'm always discovering new things. It's so vast. There's a lot that you can do. But all of this is to represent that there's a lot that can be personalized just in the materials that they provide for you, which I think is really fun. And again, changing the different colors. Wow, cool. And the brightness. And the contrast. So this is an interesting example of things that I was kind of talking about earlier in terms of what your content looks like and how it will show up differently on, I want to slow it down a little bit so it's not so glitchy. This looks great on the screen right now, or at least you can decipher between the orange and the white in this clip. But that might be a little bit more difficult to see once we're projecting it. And so this is a nice tool where you can really play with these different brightness and contrast. This has a very specific look on the screen, but when it is projecting, it's likely that this will help kind of compensate the differences between the screen and the projector too. So that's one place that you can find it. And then there's also some other places where those can happen too. Where is that default? Color controls. So over here too, this is also a place, this FX control, color controls, is a place where you can do that too. And this is typically, this control center is where I will manipulate a lot of my video content in real time when I'm out on site, to kind of get it to a place that looks much better on the wall than it does currently. But as you can see, it's definitely changing it pretty significantly on the screen. So, you know, it's really the artist's eye at that point, how you want it to look. But there are these controls here, which are really fun. Great. Any questions so far? Good. I know it's a lot. If it's too much, please feel free to tell me to slow down. Great. Something that's also here that's really fun. Let me get rid of this quad. So there's these feathering things, which are really fun too. So when we're mapping, we'll see that this is a very clean, hard cut line of this rectangle. But with the feathering, it's really nice because you can start to get some fade from that. And so, you know, as you're learning and depending on what level of projection precision that you're working in, this can be a nice little trick of the trade to do some light feathering. Sometimes it can take quite a long time to get everything lined up properly. So having the feathering kind of helps mask that type of work. And you can see there's a lot of range in that. You can also do the soft edge, which is a similar technique, but just working specifically from certain sides of it too. Great. And then just to kind of cover a few more of the generators and things that you can import. Like we were talking about earlier, you can import specific images, which I want to import things from my workshop folder. And you can, I'm pretty sure you can drag them in. Yes, you can either drag them in, or you can hit this plus sign to import them, or you can go to File, Import Media, any of those ways, and it will automatically tell it where to go in your content library on this side. You can also upload what they call movies or videos, which are in here. I'm going to upload these to my movies. I'm going to set this one aside for now. And now we have a video file in here. And it's very pink. I'm going to make a new one. It's not so pink. Okay. So this is fun. So if you guys are video creators, animators, what have you, this is a really fun way that you can upload your own content into the software and immediately start working with it in a larger space while you're mapping it to different things. And so now that we have the video imported, we can see the different ways that you can play with that too. Right now, it's just playing ahead at normal speed. You can pause it. You can reverse it. You can go fast, or skip ahead, excuse me. All sorts of different things that you can do to manipulate like that. This is kind of your timeline right here. So again, if you wanted to refresh, you just start the position at the very beginning. You can put it in a specific place that you want it to be. And again, you can change the speed here. And you can also loop. Yeah.
If you wanted to just a certain part of the video, say a person was in it, would you need to crop them in external program?
It depends. I would say kind of like best practices for MadMapper is that it is probably best to do things in other softwares prior to using MadMapper. It can take a lot of computing power to use the software. So, I mean, you know, if we're talking about just like looping, so if we wanted to, for example, if we're looping this video just for like this like 5 seconds, I can very easily do that right here, but it's putting more computing power, or it's taking more computing power on this laptop. And the more that you add to that, the more likely that it will start stuttering. And that's a great question to talk about that kind of work in the workflow of MadMapper. Is that like any software, any live generative software, the more that you add to it, the harder your computer is going to work. And the harder your computer works, the harder it will be to have the image that you want. So all that's to say, if you can edit your content to look how you want it to look beforehand, before it comes into here, the better. Yeah. And right now, all of these videos that I have are already in this kind of like 16:9 format. But what a lot of folks do in the industry are kind of create these larger collages where it'll look like all of these videos combined into one 16:9 video file, but that they can use and then crop. So like say, I wish I had a better example for you all, but like say there was this video, but it was only in this corner of this kind of like larger video that I was using. I could crop it here and say this was here, and then I could create another one and use this piece here. So it's using less CPU, GPU, all the U's, because it's taking up, it's not having to read as many files at once, if that makes sense. Because as you can, what was that?
It's like sprite packing.
Sprite packing.
In game design, where you put all the animations on one image, so it only loads one image.
Yes.
Index through it.
Absolutely, exactly. Yeah. And so something to consider with that too is like you can see, since it's using the same video file, it's playing them both at the same time, right? So as you're uploading whatever videos to them, just thinking about the sequence of these things happening together too. Yeah.
What if you wanted like the bottom right one to be faster?
That's a good question. So as far as I know, it is difficult to do that when you're using this workflow. But you could do something where you have like a separate video file, where say it's like, oops, is that what we wanted to do? Yeah, say it's this video file, but you just have it on a faster channel. And then you could say like, you know, video version 1, video version 2, and do it that way. But I do believe that with MadMapper, once you have one file, it's basically kind of like the overriding like parent file that doesn't allow you to change those different aspects, if that makes sense. But yeah, that's like a huge component of MadMapper, is that it can definitely slow down. And so I mean, you know, we'll be looking at these different arrangements of video files that we'll be using, but something for maybe a more advanced technique is looking into HAP file codec, which you can convert files into HAP through Premiere, and it's basically like a downloadable extension to give you a HAP file, but basically instead of using an MP4 or a MOV file in your movies, it uses HAP.HAP, and it's much easier for MadMapper to read. But again, that's advanced. That's when you're using maybe any more than like 10 video files at once, and going through them very quickly. You won't have to worry about all this kind of like computer usage with these different generative items as much. It's just that, you know, the packing and unpacking of these video files is a lot more strenuous. Great. You can also look at audio. You can bump that up, bump it down. Something to consider, you know, if you have multiple files that each have their own audio track on it. Again, it's good to create things specifically with this project in mind, so you know you don't even have to worry about that. But again, great to have the option that you can mess around down here too. Okay, so maybe I'll pass this around. This is a little flash drive that just basically has a picture of Pioneer Square on it, and a movie file too. If you all didn't bring any content, just something to play with. But we'll look at, oh, USB. That's right, hold on. Here, we have these. Would this work? Yeah, totally, yeah.
Would you prefer we use the same content that you
If you have a picture of another building, feel free. Yeah, totally. So this is kind of a fun aspect of MadMapper, is that we'll see that it's very difficult to be in person live mapping for something that can be super intricate. This can take hours depending on the design that you're doing to map something of this scale, and especially if you have multiple scenes or are using multiple projectors. There's a lot of work that goes into masking and designing content to go on this type of building. So what's fun about MadMapper is that you can work with a static image and do the design work at home, in your office, whatever, and then go back to the site and then do minor adjustments when you're there too. These are, I chose Pioneer Courthouse because it's always been a spot that I've wanted to map on, but the light pollution down at the square is uncontrollable, and it would take, I don't know, the mayor to sign a petition or something, I don't know. But it's always been a dream of mine to map that building, and it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
once you go on the field and try to project it onto that, how do you control the aspect ratio and scale it up and scale it down?
Yeah. So there's a couple different tricks. The first is to, like this picture, is like, it's always, okay, so the workflow is like, it's always good to go to the site that you want to map from and know exactly where you want to put your projector. And then from there, you can even, just take your cell phone or whatever and basically put it in front of the lens where the light will be projecting on. And knowing that the light will project over the entire space that you want to project on. So for example, if I was able to project from the square, taking a photo like this from the same angle that the projector light is coming from, so that you have roughly a general idea of like where you're going to be. So you can work with this in somewhat accuracy. Of course, once you get there, there's going to be tons of minutia that you're going to have to edit and play around with. But this is a good start. And then that also cuts down on the amount of size changing that you'll have to do there too. I'll show you in a minute too, easy ways that you can manipulate when you're on site too, because there will always be editing that you have to do. It's impossible. It's literally impossible to try to set up a projector exactly the same place that you had it for installations like this. But I challenge someone to do it. I don't know. Great. Is the image going around to everyone? Snaking its way? Okay, cool.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I have a question. Hi. I was wondering, so this is my first time ever even opening the program, and there's a camera, like it accesses my webcam.
Yes.
Is that for, so there's some kind of scanner inherent to the program, is that right?
Yes, there is. Yeah. I do believe that you can use MadMapper to scan 3D objects or spaces too. I have not used it personally, but that is definitely an option. Yeah. And there's other softwares too. Lightform that uses, like, it has its own sensor that they use too that can like scan a room really quickly. And all those tools are really great, especially for something that's like large scale installation. But what I like so much about MadMapper is that, again, there's like always times that you have to make like minor adjustments too, but really fun to like hack into those different sensors too, for sure. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Actually, that's a really good point too. So you can see there's like these different content spaces that you can pull from too. So we can look at different inputs too, I think. Let me see. Did you find that where you can turn on and off your webcam?
I haven't figured it out yet, but I'm looking.
Okay, cool. If you find it, just feel free to shout it out. I forget where it is on the panel. But there is a way that you can turn on your webcam as a content source, which is really fun. As a content generator. You can also, I'm on a PC right now, but you can use either Siphon or Spout to bring in other softwares doing any sort of live generative material too. And if we have time at the end, we'll look into that as well.
I found the webcam. It's over on the right. Oh yeah. Oh, but you can't turn it on. It's right where your mouse is. The right at the bottom. Those cameras.
Aha! Hi! That's fun. There we go. There it is. That was easy enough. Thank you so much. Hi all in Zoom land. Great, so that was just right here in this live input. You can do the integrated camera, guessing. well, my OBS is not going through right now. But with Spout, you could also do, I've been using Isadora and Touch Designer to go through Spout, and it basically just creates another channel that you can bring in live generative material. Again, it's good to have a high-powered computer if you're working with multiple softwares and having that kind of workflow, but it is very possible and it's very fun. But we will go back to Pioneer Square. Chilling in the square. So much fun. Okay, so now I'm gonna lock this quad just because I don't want it to move. I want it to chill and just hang out. And I'm also gonna, for the sake of presentation, go into one channel mode so you can see this better. And I'll just be using, for now, I'll just be using some of this generative material so it can show up pretty easily. And maybe I'll actually just, nope, I'm gonna keep it high opacity. So if we were in the real world with our projector, this is what we would see. And let's pretend that this projector is covering light in the entirety of where this image is taking place. But we're like, let's start mapping on this. Look at all this real estate, so much fun. So let's start. So let's just start with a quad, right? But I'm gonna use, too stroby, hold on. Let's do this gradient color. And just for the sake of presentation, I'm gonna turn the opacity down just so we can see what we're working with behind us. But I'm gonna start with this quad and I'm gonna go make it a lot smaller. Like maybe I'll fit it in to here, to this first little space. So this is just like an easy way just to fill this kind of rectangular space that we have here going on there. And as you can see, as I'm starting to like shape this around, this perspective is changing, right? Because this photograph and perhaps our projector is not perfectly square onto this building. So it is starting to look a little wonky, but in real life, that will look like it's fitting specifically into that square. And now, let's say we're like, that's cool, that's an easy one. Let's just go full out and just go tackle this dome. So I got this other quad I just created, and I wanna map this dome. So again, I'm just gonna pull down my opacity just so we can see what we're working with behind it. And when I have it selected, I'm going to come over to this panel on the bottom. And this area is where we can create masks. And I typically like to use masks much better than trying to use like a triangle and like fit it into the space, because masks work a lot better in maintaining the integrity of a video file, especially when you're using things that are not generative. So, you know, if I were to just manipulate a triangle like that but used a video file, maybe someone's face would have gotten super squished, or, you know, something's off. And so it's much better to use this technique that I'm about to show you, using the masking. than those other kind of like pre-starter ones. So first what you want to do is kind of get your quad, your like starting quad, into a position that makes sense. So, so right now, you know, we're kind of square. Maybe I'll manipulate it a little bit to kind of like, resemble what the other one's doing, because it's kind of at a slight angle. And now I'm going to go in with my masking tool. So again, my quad is selected. You can see it's highlighted. And then I'm going to click on this little plus sign next to this squiggle. And as I did that, it created mask 1. And so now I have this little cursor that is showing me exactly where I'm about to draw a mask on this quad that I've selected. And so I'm just gonna click around. And what's really fun is that you can do 2 different ways. You can either click individually with some precision, or you can just draw. And it'll create these kind of Bezier curves for you, which is great. It took them a really long time to create this workflow and to incorporate Bezier curves. I can't tell you how many times I've done domes or arches where it's like literally like clicking a million times. So it's really fun that they've upgraded that. Thank you, MadMapper folks. So again, I'm just going to draw really quickly. Go in. Oh yeah, right, I'm just going to click, one second, I'm just going to click enter to finish that mask. And then the opacity is over here on the left, just right under the quads. Yeah. Great, so now, we have this mask. Right now it cut out the chunk of content that we want. But this is nice because we can kind of see where we messed up and how we can change that around. And this is fun too. So this is the Bezier. So you have these little controls that you can really help get more precision on your curves. And you know, this was just a quick draw, but you get the idea of what we're trying to do. Kind of moving things around. But then the trick is to do invert mask, and now it's just the content that you want on the dome that we were looking for. And again, you can just go crazy, you know, getting into all of that too. But then you can see when you're highlighted on the mask, it's green, so you know it's a mask, but when you click away, you can see just what the projection will look like too. Would you like me to run through the mask again, or do you guys feel good about that?
Do it one more time.
Sure, yeah. So I'll do, maybe I'll do this triangle now. So like I said, better to use the masking options than some of the kind of pre-made quads. So just added a quad. I'm gonna lower the opacity so we can see. And then I'll go down to this little plus squiggle mark, click create mask, and then use my cursor to click around exactly where I want my projection to be. And you can click and then you can hit enter to complete the mask connection. And then once you have that, you can hit invert mask, and there you go. So that's really fun, and that's definitely the best way to do the mapping aspects of that. And as you can see, it can be pretty tedious, specifically if you're working with a lot of different shapes. You know, a lot of people will do, like either, we'll start with the whole building, oops. Maybe have something that covers the whole thing, and then they'll be like, okay, let's just like knock out these columns, or let's do something on all the borders, or, you know, let's do like the arches within the windows. It can take a lot of time. And so that's why this workflow of like using a photograph of a space is really nice, because you can spend as many hours as you need to off-site in the warm instead of in the cold, which it most likely is in Portland. And what else? Oh, I think there is just one other thing that I wanted to show you that's kind of fun, specifically with this type of design too. So we were looking at quads. They also have this that's a line, basically. So you can do the same thing, but you're just drawing lines, which is, I think, a really fun design element for this too. So, you know, I just created a shape. And then what's cool about these too is that you can use, you know, video content, you can do whatever you want. But let's look at this line pattern. You can see right now it's this line kind of going around. But you can, again, just like totally make it into something new, just using these parameters over here. Whee, kind of noisy. So that's really fun. So again, like, you know, you can incorporate both of these pieces of content to create really beautiful installations. And again, this was only just using generative material too. Cool. Does anyone have questions about that before we start hooking up projectors and hardware? Yeah.
I have a simple question. Is there a way, if you have a rectangle, to just like change the size on one axis?
Yes.
Rather than like have a scale.
Yeah, let's see. So maybe like for example, you'd want it like, I think it would be like a way of like manipulating it with both the input and the output too. So if you wanted it to only be like this much of the video, changing it in the input, but then having to also change the aspect ratio of the output that you have too. Yeah.
Is there like a snap or something? So you get like the bottom match the top versus line?
Yeah. Yes, there's a way to do that. I think it has something to do with this magnet and just like how you're working with it too. Like you can see it's like kind of snapping into the corners.
Okay.
There's probably easier ways to do that too. But again, it's like, you know, it's nice, especially when you're on site, to have these like different editing options. But it's, again, it's always better to kind of have things more prepared for the site too. But, you know, when you're in the field, it's like you can't like slow down and get in Premiere and all that too. So, yeah. Other questions? Anyone online have a question?
Is there any sort of like context awareness in terms of like resolution? I know you're probably going to get into the projector requirements here in a second, but I guess I was just curious, like, is there anything in MadMapper where you can be like, you know, my projector is only 720p and I'm trying to do this large scale thing, it's not going to render correctly. You know, you either need to like have a lower resolution video or improve the resolution of the project or something like that.
Totally. My best suggestion is to always match the resolution of your video content with the resolution of your projector. Yeah.
But right now I have no context of, you know, the throw distance to the building.
Right.
Or any of that stuff which impact that.
Absolutely.
But, yeah,
that
I just
too.
didn't know if I had any sort of way to like plug in like a project setting to be like, You know,
Oh,
just how far I'm throwing the image. These little dots that are showing up in your line there, like, aren't going to render at all, basically.
yeah. There's probably a lot that you could deep dive into MadMapper about like presets for that type of thing too, or like, you know, saving them, I guess, if that's what you're asking too. I would say that for me, what I've learned with that is just really just like on site, like messing with the content
Yeah.
while I'm there too.
One of the other.
So a lot of times,
Knowing your projector.
yeah, knowing your projector. Yeah, I would say that like most times I like don't have the lens scoped all the way out. Like I try to use it like as, you know, if you have a long distance projector, to have it as focused in as you can. It's brighter, there's higher resolution that way. There are like very specific parameters for how far away you can have your projector from the surface before it starts looking like garbage, or, you know, air quote garbage. But it's also, again, it's the artist's eye and how you want to do it. Yeah, totally. What your intentions are. But like the brighter, the higher resolution of an image is, yeah, not wanting to blow it out too. Because a lot of times it's easy to be tempted to be like, oh, I have one projector and I can cover this whole thing with one projector. But you're going to lose a lot doing that too. And
yeah,
so,
I guess that's where I was going with it. It's like, obviously, you either need like, you're going to need multiple projectors for this. Is there any way that MadMapper could be like, hey, by the way, you're going to need a lot more projectors for this?
it will not tell you that,
Yeah.
but I will tell you that. Yes. And that's actually a good point that we'll get to when we start plugging everything in too. But there's this whole other section that we haven't looked at yet that is very important to this practice that we are working on, which is this projector section. And so very similarly to the input and output of our video content is the same to the video projectors too. So let me go back and do that. So right now there's just one projector that's kind of like the starting point default for MadMapper. You can very easily hit second projector, and now you can see both of these are basically covering whatever you would want it to cover, and you can move them around really easily too. So let's say that instead of one projector, we're going to use two. And you can move those around. And of course, you know, there's like some blending techniques of making this happen too. Sorry, let me make this bigger. Oops, where did you go?
Is it more or less, or not even at all, helpful to kind of even adjust the brightness or kind of edit the primary photo that you have to make it like dark at nighttime?
Yes. Yes, totally. Yeah, the more editing that you can do, yeah, in Photoshop or whatever to brighten or make the contrast more drastic will definitely help before you put it into MadMapper for sure. And I would say that that's a really big part of my workflow too, is even in just Premiere, like making the whites whiter, contrast higher, even like specifically not using certain colors. Like oftentimes I'll stay away from like violets or blues just because they are really hard to show up on outdoor surfaces too. Yeah. But yeah, so, you know, you can hook up, let's see, I don't know if there's, whoa, you can do 13, 14, 15, 16 projectors. I don't know whose computer can handle that many, but it's possible that you could do that. Most laptops can have at least two outputs that work for this. And that's typically what I work with, one computer for two projectors. And you can see this output size here too. And then something, you can also change, you can flip things around in projectors. So sometimes like, maybe that's too difficult to explain without looking at the projectors, but I'll just say that you can designate each projector too through MadMapper. So right now, only one destination is showing up because I'm only connected to this projection screen that we're working with in the workshop space. But once I add a second projector, this destination will also show another projector too.
And is that a split cable?
Yeah. So you'll have most likely 2 HDMI cords coming out, and then depending on whatever dongle or adapter that you need. But most projectors use HDMI for the input. And then depending on the computer, it's either HDMI out, USB-C, or Thunderbolt, my favorite. Yes. So, and we'll look into this now as we start to hook up the projectors to the computers too, so we can see how that goes. But essentially, and for those of you at home too, if you can still follow us along with a projector or any output that you might have, once you're in this section, what you'll want to do is go to Output, and then go into full screen mode, and then that will push out the content that you have designated both of your projectors to, and then your laptop screen or your desktop screen, whatever you're using, will still be this workspace. So you'll be able to work in real time, mapping these projectors while you're still looking at your inputs and outputs too. Very cool. Does anyone have any questions before we move into projector time? Feeling good. Okay, great. Yeah.
I don't know if you, I want to jump ahead also, but I don't know if you have any questions with like programming in this mode and doing like the designing from the negative ratio, or the negative aspect of this, as in taking a picture of the building, cropping the building out, and then designing within that.
Oh, I've never done that before, but that's really interesting. And I think that would probably provide a lot more like maybe unique opportunities instead of like working so much with the architecture itself, you know, like my like the way my brain works is that I would be like, I want to like map every like nook and cranny and like get in here and like look at all these different things. But I also find that really interesting techniques are when it's like you just know that this whole space is able to hold light, and that you don't even have to worry about all these like minutiae of details, that sometimes it's actually more beautiful to look at the building as a whole, as a canvas, rather than like going into like such deep design elements and aspects of it too. So that's interesting, if that's kind of what you mean with like the negative space.
So I saw like 1,000 TED talks on this one before I got in.
Yeah.
And I saw somebody wanted to spray paint a building similar to this, but they obviously didn't spray paint the real building, but they took the negative of that building and put it on another surface and had artists spray paint that.
Huh.
And projected it back onto the building. So it looked like
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I love that idea. I love that. Yeah. Yeah, so that's great. I mean, like, and that's probably maybe like even a better way to think of like masking this too, is I always like to make one big scene that's kind of like the whole building, to do something similar to that, where it's just like you can kind of see like a whole video just like wash across it, and just see how it all reacts to moving through those different spaces too. Because that's a huge part of it, is like how is the video actually like navigating this materiality of it too, which is really fun. One last thing that I will say before we move on. MadMapper is so extensive, and we have only just scratched the surface. And as we get a little bit more hands-on, I'll kind of step back and just help everyone troubleshoot. But essentially, you know, like I was saying, there's things you can do with like DMX, more like kind of 3D objects. There's so much you can do. You can do like a lot more things with like sound reaction, which is really fun. Again, with thinking of performativity. But something that I use quite often are these scenes. And this is a really easy way to have multiple scenes that you're working with. So if you wanted to have, so say it's like you wanted to have multiple, you know, patches going through. I'm gonna click scene, just click it. It saves exactly what this looks like now. And then I can come in here and be like, okay, actually in the next scene, I want it to look like this with all these other crazy things going on. And now I hit scene 2, create scene, and it'll save it exactly as it is. And now I can go back and forth to these 2 different options that I just created. And you can also fade in between them. So I'd say, like, I want this to be a 5-second fade, 5-second fade. So now it'll take 5 seconds to go to that. You can also autoplay it, or you can designate all of them up here too. And then of course there's even more here, changing the duration in beats, you know, let it go in a loop, what have you. There's so much fun to be had. It's really endless. But we'll stop there just so you guys can start getting your hands on it and really just seeing how everything connects too. And then you can you could practice with the different masking tools too. Did someone have a question?
Yeah, new question before you go.
Yeah.
Sarah, up in the top left corner on mine, next to the light bulb, I have it's like a laptop instead of a projector. Is that because I don't have the projector connected right now?
It's possible. It might also be that you have a different version of MadMapper that I have. I haven't.
Oh, okay.
I haven't updated mine to the newest one.
Yeah, I have 5.04, so.
Yours is the same too? Okay. Does it look, what does it look like?
It looks like a little laptop with an arrow pointing up, and it says video output instead of projector.
Well, that probably makes sense. If you had other.
And I'm guessing that if I did have a projector plugged in, then it would give me those options that you were showing me. I guess down below where it has the destination, it would say, it would have that listed. It would have the projector listed instead of a monitor.
Dave, give me 1 second. I'm going to look at someone else's screen to see what that looks like.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, okay. And then when you got that, you just put that too. Yeah, okay. Oh, the video. Okay. And did you just change those names? I did. Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, yeah. Yeah, it seems to look the same. And in fact, it probably is more customizable because maybe people use like, I don't know. Maybe they're hooking up DMX and LCD and projectors all in the same thing. That'd be pretty sick. I don't know. I haven't tried that yet. But we will experiment.
Hi, sir. Oh,
yeah, go ahead.
hi. I just have a question about Thursday. I was wondering if your office hours are also online as well.
No, they're gonna be in person and.
Just in person, unfortunately.
Just in person, and then.
Okay.
And then there'll be conversations on Discord after, so you can also ask questions. And to that point, I do want to be mindful of time, there's not that much left, so I'm
Totally.
going to do it on like many wonderful rabbit holes, but maybe we should get there.
Totally. Yeah, so unfortunately, no office hours on Thursday, but I will be on Discord. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. Yeah, thanks so much. But yeah, let's get these projectors going. Cool. So I think that there's some kind of like scattered around the room.
There are a whole bunch by you, like them all on that table. But there are others if anyone, so those were each of the different ones.
These ones, yeah, so there's
Yeah. And then if anyone wants to grab one or two, you can come into the purples are the short through, the others, if you want to grab yourself a projector, you're welcome to. There's one for you, and you can grab some of those too.
very cool. So I'll put this microphone on.
And then I guess the giant battery is not a giant projector, it's just a projector.
This is fun. This is very fun. Okay. I'm going to take this HDMI out. Is that going to mess up anything?
No.
Okay. Great. Very fun. Is everyone familiar with using projectors for the most part? Kind of? Not really? Okay. Pretty simple to start with. Usually, you just plug it in. Projector remotes are your best friend. Don't lose them if you have them. Turn it on. There's so many different kinds of projectors. And, oh, I'm sorry, this will probably blind you as soon as I turn this on. I have really crazy nails right now, so doing super dexterous things is embarrassing. But they really vary from, again, when I was talking about like lumosity, resolution, those are the two kind of main things to think about. I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm sure it says somewhere on it. And if it doesn't, it's really easy to look that up online too. I'm sorry if I'm blinding you. Basically, all you do is just take the model number and just Google it, and it'll tell you all the information that you need to know.
There's a lot of like fake luminosity or lumens numbers from like cheap manufacturers of projectors.
Yeah.
Look at a couple places, or look at the manual.
Yes, yeah, the official site, yeah.
Craig Winslow gave me a really good website for like real reviews of
Yeah.
projectors. I'll drop it in the Discord sometime.
Projector Central and Projector People are two really good sites to do research. And I forget if it's, I think it's Projector Central that has like a whole, like, what would you call it, like calculator? That
They got the pro distance, like a visual.
Yeah, so it can help you determine like how far away from a building you can get before it just turns to mush, So that's really nice.
HDMI cable, or was that the conversation just now?
That's what I was thinking, like, what do you want? Because I would have brought something.
What was that?
This is so close to being a stable base.
It looks pretty stable. Very cool. Okay, so
Is it pretty easy to output or transfer this medium, like for like simulations and mock-ups and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Does it come out pretty quality?
Absolutely. Yeah. And especially if like you're designing something in MadMapper, you could take like a screenshot of it or something, you know, like for a deck. Yeah, and it looks great. Yeah. And again, it's just like playing with like.
I imagine most people aren't familiar, and so there's so many people you need to present this to kind of give an idea of that.
Totally. Yeah. And there's different ways that you can output it too. You can output, like if you wanted to show like a loop of this, what's a way to do that? You could output through like Siphon or Spout, which, is another type of software. It's free to download. And then you can record through that, or you could record through this other software called OBS. And then that can it can show you like the whole scene playing through like that too. So it'd basically just be like a crop of like that.
You said it's called OBS?
OBS software to record it. And then Siphon or this other software called Spout Receiver. And that is basically what takes the output from MadMapper into OBS where you can record it. There's a lot of different things. But again, they're on YouTube.
Okay.
MadMapper tutorials, they'll tell you exactly how to do that kind of stuff too. Yeah.
What type of processor do you have on this one?
For my computer?
Yeah.
You know, I am so not a gearhead. I don't even know. I remember doing the research when I first got it, and it's beefy. It's a gaming computer.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar. I'm not a gamer myself, but I've just been in the market for like the past 3 months looking for a laptop, and I've just been doing all research, so I'm trying to find the best one for things like this.
Totally. Well, this is the Alienware Area 51, I think.
Sure.
And it's badass. I have really high regards for this because I can run Premiere, Touch Designer. Oh, okay, okay, there you go. Let's look at it. But I can run like Premiere, Touch Designer, MadMapper, like all at the same time, and it doesn't even like blink an eye. It's pretty cool. Yeah, it's really nice. So like what I was talking about, when you have too much going on, basically what happens is that it just starts stuttering, like because the frame rates drop.
Right. That's what I want to be careful of.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll find somebody to fund that for me.
Totally. And you know, like SETI and other organizations around town too, they have gear that you can borrow. Yeah. And I'm sure especially after taking this workshop, like it'll be easier to get access to that too.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Y'all just go free. I can help you connect if you need help connecting. And then maybe it'd just be fun to like just start mapping different areas of the room and just kind of see what you can create. And then I can help troubleshoot anywhere you want to go. I have this one set up. If someone wants to use this one, we can turn off some of the lights in this room too to make it easier. Maybe I will move this out of the way.
Have like discrete layers, like so for the Pioneers example, what I'm thinking is columns that are layered over top, so things go behind them.
Yeah.
So either like, is it easier to do a mask, or would you do like just layers that are over top for the columns?
You could do both. But like what I normally do, like I don't know if you saw in that other like slide that I had at Northwest Film Center. It's basically probably a way that I would do it would be to just like cover the whole thing.
We're going to try to project some moderately big wall over here.
And then I would probably come in, yeah, with another layer on top. And then put the mask. Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
In that way? And you can do it either way,
Cool.
I guess.
Does it have like, you know, up and like, you know, bringing different layers to the front?
Yeah. So,
just,
yeah, you can just move them
okay,
just
I
like
see.
that.
Gotcha. That's super helpful.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So you could mask it out, the negative or the positive, I guess is what you're saying. Yeah.
Now I have to MadMapper.
It's so fun. It's so much fun. And it's so easy, you know, like it's one of, I don't know, I think it's like really easy to just kind of jump in there and move things around, you know. No, go for it. Do you want to try hooking your laptop up to a projector? Yeah, do you want to try this one?
So it's just a single HDMI cord?
Yeah, Oh, this is a weird cord. Hold on. What is that? What the heck is that? No, it's just a different cord. I don't even know what that is. What is that?
We have some questions if you,
Of
whenever
course.
you have a chance.
Yeah, I'm just gonna help her out and get a HDMI cord, but I will be right with you. Oh, you got one?
Or, well, not underneath it.
Maybe. Aha.
Can you hand me that, Annie, that little box over there? No, the tiny one, right next one, yeah.
No. Here we go. Okay, fun. This is better. This is a superior HDMI cord. I don't know what that was. Okay. And then we just need a dongle to get into your computer. Pretty sure, because it's so new. Watch it. That's great. Cool. And then what I like to do is I always like to have my computer like facing the same way. Just so it's easier to kind of like look up. It has like a desktop option. Let's go through all these things. I don't know what's... She's asking me a lot of questions. Okay. Yes. Okay. So it should be... I think it said it was connected. Oh, there we go. Oh, there's another... Oh, he's got one over there too. Let's go over here. Does that work? Is that cool? So right now what's happening is that your screen is being mirrored. So I will show you how to get in there. I think we want...
Is it usually?
System preferences. Sometimes that happens. It gets like really small when you plug in a projector. So we'll go to displays. I think. Sorry, it's so small. Let's go back. Displays. Here you go. So that's where you want to go. Displays and system settings. And then you'll go to arrangement, and you want to make sure that you're not mirroring display. So now you can see it's not showing you what's on your desktop right now. So we'll gather windows, and we'll get rid of this. And then now, maybe it'd be good just to start with like a blank slate. So we'll do new project. And I'll just create a quad just so you can see that there's something going on right now.
And with the demo version, does it still project only the image? Or will
It will
keep
project,
watermark?
the watermark will come through.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay, it's all right.
Yeah. Totally. But yeah, okay, so I'm clicking on the video output, and now you can see that the projector is connected. You can see it's BenQ, so you just make sure you designate that.
Okay.
And then go to output, full screen mode, and there you go. There you have it. So now you can, go to town, doing all sorts of funky stuff. These are kind of fun. These corners are kind of fun. You can like play with like doing optical illusions with that. Does that sound good? Cool. I'm gonna turn some of these lights off.
Projecting my screen. It's projecting like the screen, not the output to, but I think if I click this button, you see how now it's projecting the playback mode to the output, I think. This one up here, I think. Although no, you can see my map around it. So I think the question is, how do we get this video output to be the output, not the Mac screen? Master and select. It says activate the preview group. You see my outline of my MacBook out there. I'm trying to figure out how to get it to, it doesn't seem to work. Output. There you go. Well, I think that's just going to full screen.
But I think there's still just trying to understand what you're actually creating as far as your canvas, what you're projecting, and having it really to your different inputs.
He's having trouble connecting, so I don't know if you know what's going on in one second.
Which?
Carl. I said Carl had some questions. I think I can hold this if you want to. I can stand here and watch.
About the MIDI controller?
Oh, no, he was, yeah. Oh, yeah, actually somebody, whoever wants to, Carl was just wondering what was going on with his, he couldn't get it to actually work.
I'm going to take a picture of this, exactly where the lens is. So I have the throw ratio, the exact aspect ratio, and the distance from. So you wouldn't actually need to scale it any more than what it is in the picture, as long as you put the projector exactly.
So you have to test your projector at the site or something in advance.
That's best practice. But yeah. Sometimes it's not so But I would say, for this demonstration that we're doing now, let's just like throw this.
Justin, if it's just a bad projector, we'll mark it and use one of the other ones.
Well, I mean, just to get to the problem.
Is that the BenQ?
Like, exercise what it is. So, what was the point of, obviously, we mask out here and we're able to create, I'm going to create some over each of these parts. That's how you do it. And it seemed like what you were doing was, you cut out.
Is that the short throw?
Creating a canvas over there.
Is that the BenQ?
That part of the system will now be
Optima.
So
Oh, maybe that's the BenQ.
triangle over here, able to create a mask over here, but that's not really the point, even though it seems like what's created is this ability to project within that bit. And how do you, let's say I wanted to map my video into that, how would you say for that bit?
Oh, yeah.
Please put my video in there.
Oh, yeah, totally. Okay, so,
Yeah, it's always hard to figure out whether to stream when somebody's wandering around.
I'm having all the technical issues. Are there any batteries for this?
Yes, there's a box. There's one of the,
Two triple.
or if there's, in the cupboard, there's a box of batteries. It's in one of the like weird kit boxes that used to be a kit box, but it's a whole bunch of batteries. It's in like the middle shelf, I think. Justin, I think it's in the middle shelf, like in the rightmost corner.
Well, I see triple.
You think this will balance?
This got really complicated. I really think what's going to be easier right now is like, let's just look at like.
They're actually good. They're rebranded kind of side loops. So they're really bad. Yeah.
It's starting out. There you go. I think it's like loose.
So that would be another example of working with, like, I'm working with an object, like a sculpture that I created or something, to just get a projector onto it and start playing.
So a lot of the projectors had broken pieces. I checked out like 12. I'm glad I did because some of them are just kind of. Thank you for doing this today.
Is that I've primarily worked in outdoor spaces.
Are you gonna do winter lights? I can't remember if you were signed up or not.
Mapping techniques
Figure out something.
for hours.
You should do so. You should at least come and help. There are a bunch of people.
Oh, yeah.
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 There are a bunch of people who want to do some like weird video interactive projections, and by tomorrow we'll have touch designers, so you could come and like just over the weekend sort of informally teach touch design.
That's something that's really fun.
Is it taping yours?
Maybe you can actually make it go higher, like if you affect the spectrum settings here. Let's see, peak size. Ba 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 ba. Da 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 da. I wonder if we get it to go higher, like have a higher amplitude. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Pick that up. Mission accomplished. We got a VU meter and we got some art stuff projected on some chairs.
That's so cool.
I heard you talking about CRT, so I want to show you the input side. This is the content generation side.
Nice.
The display side, I just ordered for like $20 with shipping off of eBay, like an 8-channel composite video mixer.
Oh, cool.
So now I finally have something that.
What's it? Is it like?
Just make that here?
All my other stuff.
Oh, no, this is a video for my friend.
Oh, nice. Do you have like a component switch? Is that what you're talking about? Like to help route through all of them?
For this is just like a stack of CRTs.
Oh, you're making like a CRT wall? So like
that's basically my living room. It's not a wall, it's a pile.
It's a pile.
You know, now I actually have a 8-channel component to
nice.
Put out.
So it's like a distribution amplifier type thing.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Very cool. I don't know if I have any
multiple inputs. That's a good.
Let's see if I have any pictures of my little setup here somewhere. Yeah, I have like a Residency MX1, you know, those switchers. I have that and like two 20-inch flat screen Trinitrons and then like a PVM, and then I have a couple of others. I actually have there's a specific version of Roku device that still outputs analog video, and it's still supported in the software side. So I put a bunch of like, I watch tons of like Frasier and Cheers and like vintage SPG shows on my CRT the Flex Media server, and it actually looks really good.
Yeah, I have a bright side with analog output, but I need the Roku with analog output.
They're expensive on eBay. I bought a second one though. They go for like $60, $70.
Yeah.
Compared to what a Roku normally costs.
I've got an HDMI component or composite, right? Yeah.
The problem is
I know.
they won't boxing and letterboxing. That's why I did it. Because the Roku is the only device that I could find that would natively output 4x3 but still do streaming services. Like it's the only supported hardware that still does 4x3 and has an analog output to it.
Yeah, you can get the new Raspberry Pis to do it.
That's where I started, but
they're not great with video.
Well, I think the problem is that there's no way to tell, like Netflix or whatever, that you want a 4x3 output.
Right.
So the operating system.
HBO Max. Disney Plus, you can switch your output to like old seasons of Simpsons.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, there's a switch to.
Oh, that's really cool.
Oh, it's there. Where is it? It's like in the
you gotta Google it.
developer tools or something.
Yeah. It's a hidden option, but if you Google it, you can find it and do it.
Gotcha.
But HBO Max, I started watching Reno 911, and it's like
We just watched all.
half the jokes are outside the frame.
Oh, see, that's why you gotta get it on. That's why I didn't put it on my Slack server. Yeah, it's a thing. What's your name?
Justin.
Justin. I'm Sean. Nice to meet you. Do you what are you planning to do with your CRT wall?
I keep myself entertained. It's about. I live on the 3rd floor, so I don't really bring it out anymore. But I did a winter lights installation. There was a few of them, and like.
We had a Christmas, a little small friends gathering, and I put the Yule log on.
Yeah,
I have the 9-inch Sony Trinitron, the like nice white one.
Yeah.
It's like the KV something or other. It looked pretty good. Got a lot of good chuckles out of it. And like I feel like there's something good, like there's something sort of meta about, you know, the warmth of the Yule log and the warmth of the CRT. You know, it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty much just for me at this point. I don't know what I'm doing with it. It's just that's what I enjoy doing after doing all this.
Going.
Good. We got some BU meters. We got some projection mapped on stools and.
Very cool. Oh yeah, I love it. Look at those stools.
Yep. Done.
Very
Mission
cool.
accomplished.
Awesome.
This tiny little guy.
Next challenge.
Next challenge.
Do you want to make a couple scenes?
Oh yeah, we were talking about. Do you want to make a scene?
Push
Maybe you
through
can
some
make the next scene and then we can switch through it. Because I made this one.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
All right. How do we do the scenes? Where was that?
If you go.
I think on the bottom, right?
Oh, here. Scenes and cues. So you just create like ads.